Hi everyone, I'm Rincey and this is Rincey Reads. Today I'm going to be talking about The Original Daughter by Jemimah Way. I'm not exactly sure. Apologies. This is a literary fiction book. It is following the story of these two sisters, kind of. You are mainly following the story from the point of view of this young girl named Genevieve. When the book begins, you find out that Genevieve is with her mother in Singapore, and her mother is dying, and she keeps asking Genevieve to call her sister and let her know that she's dying and she wants to see her one last time and stuff like that. And her sister, named Erin, is like a famous now actress and things like that. And so Genevieve basically like refuses to call her. It's implied that they've had some sort of falling out and they haven't spoken in years. And even now on her mother's deathbed, she refuses to reach out. Then you flash back in time and you see the story of their life and their relationship. So Genevieve is the only daughter of her like mother and father, and they lived in their grandmother's flat. And one day their grandmother announces that their grandfather, who they presumed was dead, actually just like left their family, which she just found out as well, and actually had another family in, I believe, Malaysia. And that family is now asking their grandmother to take the youngest daughter because they can't afford to take care of her. And so that is how Erin ends up in this family. And the two of them are close enough in age that they basically are seen as like sisters. And so you follow the two of them as they grow up in Singapore, dealing with the pressures of being successful. They come from a lower class family, not having a lot of money, things like that. And so they need to do a lot in order to achieve well in like school and stuff like that. So that way they can, move up in life and stuff like that. And then you lead through their lives leading up to the event that ends up causing the two of them not to talk anymore. So that's basically all I'll say in terms of the synopsis. This was a complicated reading experience for me personally. It has, I feel like, pretty decent reviews on Goodreads. And so I went into this one with pretty high expectations, and also like the beginning of the book really intrigued me. Like I really enjoyed sort of seeing this like complicated family relationship and seeing this dynamic of like this outsider coming into this family, but not just an outsider, but it also is sort of like this symbol of betrayal from the grandfather and things like that, because the grandmother, as well as like Genevieve's father, just assumed he had died, I think when he went off to war or something along those lines. And so they had this like revered memory of him, but to find out that he just full on left the family, did not stay in contact, started a brand new family, all this stuff, shakes things up quite a bit. And then also like Genevieve now has like a sister who, they get off to an awkward start and things like that. And so all of that like family drama stuff I was super into. But this book is basically like broken up into 3 parts where you see Genevieve and Erin as young girls when they first like meet and become a family together. And then it kind of jumps forward in time to when Genevieve is in school, and Erin is also starting school and stuff like that, and sort of like the stress and competition and the need for achievement sort of putting pressure on Genevieve specifically, and how she handles and reacts all of that, and then sort of like the post-school life, and then leading up to the, I guess, present day version of them. And once the story starts straying away from the central plot of the family, it really gets bogged down. There was like part of this book that because of like who Genevieve is as a character, like it's very like cold and detached. Genevieve is not a character who I enjoyed being in the perspective of, because she's just like really got under my skin, which like credit to the author for being able to achieve that at least. But it was like very, very difficult for me to like read this book. Like when there were scenes of like Genevieve and Erin together and like the two of them with their relationship, dealing with things, whether it was good or bad, like that I was into. All the other stuff, could not care about. And I recognize that like some of the stuff that happens in those other parts are like pertinent to what happens with the sisters, but like it was just so difficult for me to read. The middle section gets really, really bogged down for me, and I almost gave up on this book like at multiple points, but I just kept like pushing through for some reason. I think part of the reason is because like this book was giving me slight Elena Ferrante vibes. Now I've only read the first book in the quartet, but it was like giving me a similar vibe of like this literary fiction book that had decent reviews, that was about like a complicated sisterish relationship. I know the Ferrantes, they're friends, not sisters, but they're kind of competitive with each other, but they also love each other and things like that. And so like those themes are like similar in this book. The writing style, even like the detached nature, the coldness, the fact that I was annoyed in the beginning, like in parts of it, the way I was with Ferrante, like I remember just like with reading the Ferrante book, like getting to a point in the book and being like, oh, I get it now. Like everything just suddenly clicked and I was in. And I was expecting that, and I think hoping for that to happen in this book, and it didn't. And that's part of the reason why it disappointed me. I think I also just was not surprised necessarily by like the conflict point that happens. I'm not going to get into it too much, but I didn't know exactly what would happen, but I had a general sense of like what the betrayal was. So like building up to it, with me not enjoying it as much, also I think made it hard. I think this book is like almost 400 pages. Actually, no, it might not be, but it felt like it, and not in a great way. So, but I feel like there is like an audience for this book, and I just think that audience was not me, because again, there are a lot of people who really, really enjoyed this book. So I think if you're someone who can handle a more complicated protagonist and like being in their brain the whole time, you will enjoy this book. I just had a really hard time with it because I kept wanting to just like yell at Genevieve and be like, your perspective on this is like so pessimistic and off, and it like didn't make any sense. There's a coldness to all of the characters here, which I think is like just part of like how they are, that made it hard to connect sometimes with what was happening. There are parts of this book that for me felt overwritten, that again just made it really difficult. And this is like just one of those books where I was just like, oh, it had the potential for me to love it, but it just didn't click, and it made me sad. So yeah, overall, I don't know. I'm not like angry necessarily that I read this book. Like I'm the type of person who DNFs pretty frequently, and I'll DNF for just like any reason whatsoever. But there was like part of me that was intrigued the whole time. I wanted to see the conflict point, and to see how all of that played out. But then also I wanted to see sort of like how the book resolved. Did I love the ending? I didn't hate it. I will say that. And it was interesting choice, like interesting in a good way. So yeah, like it's one of those books that I have such complicated feelings about it. I need other people to read it so that way I can talk about it, because even whether you loved it or you hated it, I feel like I would want to talk to you about it to see sort of how other people interpreted this book. This feels like one of those books that would be also like a good book club book, only because I feel like it's going to be divisive. I feel like people are either going to love this book or hate this book, and I can't necessarily tell you what camp you're going to be in. You just got to go and see what happens. So yeah, those are my quick thoughts on The Original Daughter. Really complicated feelings about this book, and so I just felt like I needed to talk about it. Hopefully there's someone else out there who will come across this video who's also read it, and will come talk to me about it, or maybe this video will intrigue you enough because I have such complicated feelings that you're willing to go try it yourself. So yeah, that's all I have for now, and thanks for watching.